You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. Today we're discussing Catch 1782. This is a Big Finish 6th Doctor story. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today is Jimmy Aiken. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Doctor Who. We're on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Secrets of Doctor Who. You can retweet us on X, where we're at SQPN, and leave us comments wherever you find us. We love to hear from you. And speaking of hearing from you, we have some of your great listener feedback that we'll be sharing at the end of the episode, so stick around for that. But in the meantime, Jimmy, can you give us a recap of Catch 1782?
Sure. This week, the Sixth Doctor and Mel arrive in Berkshire, England in 2003, and they land in the middle of a true historical. There's not an evil alien monster in sight. They're there to visit Mel's uncle at an event being held by a scientific foundation that is going to bury a time capsule. The scientific foundation is housed in an old house that's reportedly haunted by the ghost of a woman. And it turns out that a copy of the time capsule made out of the same experimental alloy is somehow already buried in the ground. Because of its weird alloy, the duplicate time capsule interacts with the TARDIS and causes a glitch in time that sends Mel back to 1781, where she suffers from intermittent memory problems that stop her from remembering everything she's supposed to. Fortunately, the master of the house, a recent widower named Henry Hallam, takes her in. A local doctor named Wallace also treats her according to the best of his ability, which unfortunately means doping her up on lots of laudanum, so she's doped up almost all the time. Our doctor and Mel's uncle eventually track her down in the TARDIS, but by this point Henry Hallam has become obsessed with her and wants to marry Mel. It also looks like they may not be able to take Mel back to 2003, as she is the basis for the ghost haunting the house, and removing her would undo the fabric of time. However, the Doctor decides this won't happen. They bury the duplicate time capsule so it can be found in 2003, and the gang makes it back to Mel's proper time. Their departure causes Henry Hallam to have a nervous breakdown, but it's revealed that he will eventually get married to his household servant, Mrs. McGregor, so he gets a happy ending. The end.
So, the thing that was preventing them from going forth is that marriage, right? The Eleanor Hallam, that they thought that was going to be Mel, but it ends up being Mrs. McGregor being Eleanor Hallam.
No. There are scattered records of Eleanor Hallam. So let's explain the origin of the name. So when Mel gets back to 1781, she thinks her name is Mel, but she's not sure, and they mishear it as Nell, which is from short for Eleanor. Yes. So they think her name is Eleanor, and Eleanor Hallam is Eleanor is this mysterious woman that never really existed apart from Mel. But there are some weird, at least this was how I understood it, there are some weird records, one of which is a death record for Eleanor in 1811.
Yeah.
So 30 years later. But the Doctor decides that death record was faked. And so it appears that Eleanor never really existed.
And that the woman in the painting is Mrs. McGregor in that dress.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah. Because that's one of the things I liked about this. Sorry, I usually let you go first, but with your own impression. But just since we're talking about it, the portrait / dress payoff I thought was nice. It wasn't flashy. It doesn't over-explain. Maybe they should have explained a little more, given our differing understandings of what was going on. But they didn't attempt to over-explain things to us in that. So I thought that part was nice. But yeah,
I think that there are. I like the fact this is a true historical.
Yeah,
and it's a nice story. I think it has a few plot holes in it. The big one for me being the death record.
Yeah.
Because the doctor, even though the doctor at the end of part 3 has dramatically announced we can't take Mel back because it's going to unravel the fabric of time, in part 4, he just decides it's okay to take her back. And they say, well, like, what about the death record? And he says, oh, I think that Henry Hallam faked that. And it's like, no, you got to give us more than that.
Yeah.
I mean, it even if it's just as simple as saying, Henry, in 2011, we need you to write a fake death record. You need to do something to set that up.
Right.
About how does the death record get written.
Or Dr. Wallace.
Or Dr. Wallace, just, hey, we need to preserve the fabric of time. Remember, in 2011, you need to write up a fake death record.
Right.
Something like that. So, but it's fixable. I just thought that that it has a few holes that they needed to work on like that.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing, well, did you have I wanted to get your overall impression since I went out of order.
My overall impression is that it's fine. It's enjoyable. Mm-hmm. It's a 4-part story, and these days I tend to prefer 1-part stories unless there's something really special. I mean, by 1-hour stories. Yeah. Unless there's something really special about it, like Live 34, which is really special. Mm-hmm. But it's fine. It's enjoyable. There's not a lot to it. I enjoy the fact that we don't have the Master or the Daleks or the Cybermen or some other alien thing we've got to deal with here.
Yeah,
I mean, they do it more.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on record as liking historicals. The main sci-fi element is this canister made of whatever prototype material that does cause the glitch. But that's not like an alien sci-fi thing. It's just it
was made by humans. Yeah.
Yeah. Scientific happenstance. The thing I like about this is I thought Henry Hallam's mania was a bit over the top, but that's fine.
They do explain that he is a very recent widower. His wife died like 3 months before Mel showed up. Yeah. And she hangs around for 6 months. So for 6 months he's been hoping he's going to get remarried to her. Right. Which was a 1780s. It was a fairly commen occurrence. People got remarried quick.
Yeah. Especially, like, there aren't any children involved here, but if there were children, that would be an extreme motivator, is to remarry for the children. But, the critique in the story is, can't treat people as a means to soothe your grief. I mean, that's really kind of the message there. Mm-hmm. That's what Henry Hallam is trying to do. He's trying to use Mel as a way to soothe his grief over his wife's death. What
I liked about it was both of the main 18th century characters, Henry Hallam and Dr. Wallace, have turns. Because Henry starts as the sympathetic guy who's given Mel shelter, and Dr. Wallace starts as a bad guy who wants to ship. I mean, he's not evil, but he wants to ship her off to an asylum.
He suspects her of taking advantage or of just being a crazy person.
Yeah. And then they both have turns. So Henry has a heel turn where he becomes a bad guy and he's obsessed about Mel. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Wallace has a face turn and becomes a positive good guy who's working with the doctor. Yeah. And so I liked both of those turns.
Yeah, I like that we had that range in those characters that they were, and that's one of the things you can do when you have a little bit more time in a 4-parter like that, I guess. So you can really develop it a little more, and it doesn't seem so sudden. But I do like that. And in the end, Dr. Wallace becomes a confidant and an ally. He knows what's going on. He knows time travel is involved and that mm-hmm. sort of thing. And he's still on board. And also the fact that Wallace throughout is trying to be a friend to Henry, even when Henry rejects him, when Henry has thrown him out, and he hates him now. He's still trying to do good for his friend Henry, mm-hmm. right to the end, and I even when it costs him. And I think I like that about the character.
I also like that they're not shy once Mel goes back to 2003 about Henry's nervous breakdown. Mm-hmm. I mean, he really just snaps and collapses and is, desperate and tearful and everything. And this is something that, makes sense for the character. And it's nice that they acknowledge it and we get to see it.
Mm-hmm. Did I miss something about that explained the ghost of Eleanor Hallam? Why they see a ghost? Like I blanked while I was listening at some point.
It's the glitch in time. So, and they established that even from the TARDIS. There's an initial scene where the Doctor and Mel are on the TARDIS. Yeah. And they're heading to this event with Mel's uncle, and there's the Doctor. Mel doesn't experience it, but the Doctor experiences a glitch in time, and he hears a woman's voice calling for help, and that apparently is Mel, right. Which I guess just from listening to it is that's going to be Mel's voice, and it turned out it was that during, and now we're led to believe that after Mel got stuck in the 1700s, she persisted for years and has been haunting this house ever since. But now it appears it's this glitch in time that was focused on her when she was raving and doped up on laudanum, wandering around the house, calling for help because she felt she'd been abandoned by the Doctor, who she couldn't quite remember. And so it was all stuff that was in that 6-month window. But because it's a glitch in time, it's perceived repeatedly later over history, which actually,
go ahead.
Which is actually similar to actual hauntings, which
I was literally going to say that.
They're sometimes called residual hauntings. And the idea is that they're place memories or recordings of historical events. They're not actually ghosts. That's a different phenomenon. Mm-hmm. But it's very easy if you're to mistake a residual haunting for a ghost if you don't think about it carefully with like, is this interactive? Can I actually talk with it and hold a conversation? Or is its behavior always the same? If it's always the same, if it's acting like a recording, the current parapsychological theory is, well, that's what it is. It's a recording.
So one thing I don't know if we said, but Henry Hallam is an ancestor of Mel.
Yeah.
So because it's her uncle lives at this foundation because the house
inherited it.
He'd inherited this house and had donated it to the foundation on the condition that he could continue to live there while, doing his scientific research. And so that's who they're visiting, as you mentioned, her uncle John. And so he's both a historian, so he knows the history conveniently, and a hobbyist chemist, which leads to unfortunate alloys, apparently. And so he kind of becomes a temporary companion to the Doctor as they go back to search for Mel. Yeah. Which is nice.
And he takes to the role, quickly. He gets up to speed really fast. They fake us out though, because he's got a pet cat named Jupiter, and he initially wants to take Jupiter with him. And the Doctor, even though he's got a little cat pen on his coat, he says no.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, because Uncle John is afraid that Jupiter will go hungry. He's like, I will get us back moments after we left. So the cat will not even know we're gone. One of the interesting things I think they did, it was a little subtle. I thought, I may be wrong, but I felt like when Mel shows up in 1781, her accent changes from her natural sort of middle class, lower class accent to something a little more posh. And it was subtle, but once she starts talking with Henry Hallam, I felt like and maybe native British folks could correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like she got a little more posh, a little more upper class in that, and that's kind of what gets her in the door a little bit, because clearly she's not, someone's servant somewhere or something.
Yeah,
like
if she had a lower class accent, they might have just kicked her out on the street.
Right. So one of the things that I'm not an expert by any means on the literature or the history of this time, but it sounded, the way they described it sounded less like Regency England. It sounded more like Regency England, like Jane Austen novels, than it did Gregorian, which is what this would have been. 1781 was, King
Georgian.
Georgian. No, sorry, you're not Gregorian. Georgian. Because it was King George at the time.
Yeah, we had just thrown off the shackles of our former British overlords.
Exactly.
No offense to our former British overlords.
Yes, we're all pals now. But just a nit to pick in the way that they did it. But otherwise, I think it was interesting, especially the McGregor twist at the end, the Mrs. McGregor. Given that it's
is that like something out of a Jane Austen novel? The household servant marries the master. Yeah.
Yes. Well, but given it's an audio story, I had an image in my mind of a much older woman, not someone who is presumably closer to Mel's age. I mean, given that she fits in the same dress and all that sort of thing, and it would be even a visual substitute in a painting, because given that it's a painting that they see of Eleanor Hallam, or that they assume is Eleanor Hallam, and so that could be Mel. So it's an interesting audio story twist that you could only really do in an audio story. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, you could do the twist, but they do need to do something to, it provides an additional piece of misdirection for the audience, that we have this painting that does not look like Mel. So it distracts the audience from Mel as the real basis here.
Right. There is an element, a historical element of the tendency of the time. Although, especially in the Victorian era, to treat women as fragile, like women's ailments. Oh, she has to go to the sea, to get air, because she's hysterical, or these sorts of ideas of women as fragile objects. And I guess given the maternal mortality rate throughout most of history, that fragility, would not have been completely unwarranted. But it's the idea that Mel is this poor creature who has to be, who's so frail and needs to be popped up on laudanum and all this sort of thing.
By the way, we should mention what that was, because a lot of modern folks won't know what laudanum is. Laudanum is an alcoholic tincture made with opium. Yeah. So it's basically liquid opium that you're getting doped up on.
If you've ever read the Master and Commander books.
Yeah, it used to be considered a medicine. Yeah.
Stephen Maturin in the Master and Commander books self-administers. He's a doctor who self-administers his own laudanum. So you mentioned Hallam's heel turn. He gets really super creepy. By the end. Like he's intent on marrying her, whatever her feelings for him. He knows that she doesn't have feelings. They'll develop. And Wallace calls him out. He's like, "You're only lusting after her." Like he lays it out for him.
Mel also really gets creeped out by him because she started to come down off the laudanum. The doctor had them discontinue it, and so her mind is getting clearer. And it's like, you've kept me here for months, doped up on laudanum. I don't know what you've even done to me while that was the case. Have you taken advantage of me? Right.
I mean, it gets kind of creepy. The Hallam's change throughout that story is a dramatic move. So Wallace keeps trying to get Hallam to put Mel in an asylum, but the doctor, he shows up looking for Mel, thinking that she would only have just shown up. Right. And so he doesn't realize that the woman who's been staying here for 6 months is Mel. So now he has to kind of like, oh, she's not the friend I said just went missing. I can't claim that anymore. So now I have to find another reason to whisk her away, to get time alone with her. And you can see why they would say, why this doctor shows up on the doorstep and now wants to have time alone with this poor woman
to treat her.
To treat her, yes, to treat her. And now he wants to have her alone so he can talk to her and get her out of there. But yeah, to treat her is what he says. His treatments kind of go against the accepted medical practice of the time, which is dope her up on laudanum and that.
And he at one point he's passing himself off as a specialist in mental disorders, and he says, "Have you considered withdrawing the laudanum?" And they say, "Oh, we've tried that many times, but it just leads to her babbling about this crazy stuff about the future. So it obviously is not helping."
Right. Exactly. We also have a bootstrap paradox in this with the canister. The only reason the canister is there to send Mel back in time is because the doctor buries the canister in the garden in 1781.
It's not quite a bootstrap paradox because they established that that Mel's uncle made a prototype canister around 2003, but it wasn't the finished version that they were going to bury. So the sequence is Mel's uncle makes canister number 1, then he makes an improved canister number 2 that they're going to use. Then canister number 1 gets taken, interacts with the TARDIS and goes back to the 1700s. Then they bury it in the 1700s. Then it gets dug up in the 2000s, and then they destroy it so this can't happen again.
Okay, because I thought it was the one that was buried in 1781 is the one that sends Mel back in time.
It is, but it's not a true bootstrap in that somebody actually made this canister. It would be a true bootstrap if nobody made it, and it's just been on this loop.
Right. Yeah, it's a kind of bootstrap.
It does have. It's sort of a bootstrap with laces. There is a beginning point and an end point to this canister.
That's true. Yeah, he ends up breaking the loop. Yeah. So that I thought that was an interesting element to add into it. You actually kind of see that quite a bit in Doctor Who. They have this the loop that they have to break.
One of the things I liked about this is, so the Doctor declares at the end of episode 3 that they can't take Mel back, and she's not around to hear that. But then in episode 4, she deduces that on her own and says, you may not be able to take me back because now I'm the basis of this ghost and it'll tear apart the fabric of time. And she says, I'm in a catch-22. Which is a paradoxical situation, and that's hence the title of this, Catch 1782.
Right.
Why it wasn't 1722, I don't know, but because that would have made it even closer and more obvious. But that's where the title comes from. So I like the fact that Mel deduces she may not be able to go back on her own. But I don't like the Doctor just reverses his opinion in the space of a few minutes and says, nope, it's okay to take her back.
The other thing that kind of makes me, I wonder about is Mrs. McGregor's, is her arc, like, is it empowering to her, or was it just a convenient way to get us out of having to leave Mel behind? Does it feel like a gimmick or does it feel integral to the story?
My personal impression is that it's I don't know that I'd say it's kind of a gimmick.
Yeah. It feels convenient.
Yeah. And I think that Mrs. McGregor was included in the story because there are other household servants we never meet.
Yeah.
And the reason that Mrs. McGregor is included in the story is so that she can end up fulfilling the parts of the ghost puzzle that she needs to fulfill in order for the ghost puzzle to be a distraction from having the audience realize too early that the ghost is Mel.
Right. Yeah,
that's not to say she's a bad character. I like her as a character. It's just I think the reason she exists is for plot functions.
Right. Yeah, we need to have that wrap up at the end. We need to restore the order and restore like this idea that there's a, why this woman was in the painting, etc.
Yeah, but she herself is a good person, and she interacts positively with Mel, and she ends up standing up for herself. And even though she's doing it at a time where Henry is not going to be responsive because he's obsessed with Mel and about to have a nervous breakdown, but we get enough that we know eventually it's going to work out for him.
Right. Yeah, she's a good person. She again suspicious of Mel in the beginning, is jealous of her at the top of it, but in the end, Mel is still a vulnerable person who she helps take care of, and then Henry Hallam is the same.
Yeah, well, and she doesn't start being jealous of Mel. She starts being concerned about Mel.
Right.
And then as Mel's memory starts to improve, once they get her off the laudanum, she's there. She's excited for Mel, that Mel is now feeling better and thinking better. And then she starts to realize, oh, but now you're talking about this future stuff again, and she becomes concerned again. So she has a number of different relationships with Mel that she goes through that are all very believable and kind.
Yeah. That, by the way, that laudanum gets out of Mel's system really fast.
Well, the doctor gives her a hangover cure that he got on another planet that he mentions.
That's true. That's right. So let me think. Any other elements anything else you wanted to say about this one?
No, I think that's about it. This is mainly a story-driven one. It doesn't have a lot, since it's not since it is a true historical, it doesn't, and an audio play, it doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, a lot of science fiction bells and whistles in it to comment on.
Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty tight story in that there's not it doesn't travel very far. It's all kind of just on this estate in a few rooms, even, and then outdoors a little bit. Mm-hmm. So it is a pretty tight story.
I like one line early on, a couple of lines in it. In episode 2, when Mel has just arrived in the 1700s, and her memory is, flaky, and she's struggling to remember, and she's calling for the doctor, and they bring Dr. Wallace up to her, and she says, "You're not the doctor, wrong coat."
Yes.
And she also, before they arrive at the Scientific Foundation event, she tells the doctor to change because this is a black tie event.
Right.
And so she's not dragging him in there in the Technicolor vomit dream coat. When the doctor arrives in episode 3 at Henry Hallam's house, he and Mel's uncle both come in, and we hear Mrs. McGregor say, "May I take your coat, sir?" And anytime there's a reference to the doctor's coat, yes, it pricks up the ears. And then when they're even though the doctor announces himself as the doctor, they're initially, okay, so where did you study? And he said, at a private university at Gallifrey in Ireland.
Right.
And so, okay, nice callback there to the classic series where he would introduce himself as being from Gallifrey, and people would think it's a place in Ireland.
Yes, and we get that in the new Who too, with the 10th Doctor as well.
Mm-hmm.
There was also another element to the clothing thing. So it's a black tie event. So Mel had gotten changed into a gown for this event, this formal, the doctor remarks on it, and a black gown. And so when she ends up in Hallam's house, she's dressed up in this gown and wearing black, which is why he thinks that she's
in
one of his, his wife's, his Janet's friends who's still in mourning. So it is kind of a neat, they make that neat connection. That's they did, that was a well done little bit there.
What kind of husband doesn't know his wife's friends though? That's an interesting social dynamic. Yeah,
some of the stuff I've read of, I haven't read any Austen, but I've read other stuff about this period, and people didn't necessarily know, husbands and wives didn't necessarily know, at least at that social class.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different. The one last thing I wanted to mention was the confrontation, or the moment between McGregor and Hallam. What I expected was Mrs. McGregor would confess her feelings, Hallam would see her in a new light, and and they would live happily ever after. But no, he rejects her. And how dare you rise above your station?
As soon as she starts confessing her feelings for him, and she's wearing the dress that he bought for Mel.
Yeah.
And I'm going, oh, this is the wrong time, lady. Read the room. This is not going to go well. And it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. He gets very, and that's what the mental breakdown pretty much happens is in that scene. So any other notes on this one?
Nope. I think that's it.
All right. So we'll move on to our listener feedback. This was on our recent discussion of the third Doctor story, Death to the Daleks. James Rollins, 1122 on YouTube writes, "The city and the aliens are the most remarkable part of this episode for me. Mm-hmm. I always forget that there's a small team of other humans involved in the story. I liked all the creative elements involved in making and destroying the city in spite of limited resources." Yeah, that city melts more than anything. There's a heat gun somewhere above it.
Clearly parts of it made out of styrofoam. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then John Griffiths, 4373 on YouTube, writes, "The reflection is, as you allude, to material on costumes and set design. It is made possible by a lighting rig fitted around the camera lens. By switching it on, it reflects onto the surface it hits, similar to reflective material on road surfaces when a headlamp on a car hits it or on high-visibility jackets. It was also used on the bow in Silver Nemesis." That's a seventh Doctor story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It refers to like the alien costumes where the aliens were kind of glowing.
They have seams, and in between and behind the seams in the costumes, there's this reflective material that glows at times.
Right. And some of the signs on the city walls would glow.
Now, if you really wanted to swing for the bleachers, you should have made the space mashed potatoes glow.
That would be really great. I love, the practical effects, trying to do things in camera, but long before CGI, just it can look a little cheesy to our modern eyes where we're so used to everything being CGI, but they had to do things practically, physically. So, kudos to them. All right. Thank you both for the feedback. We love getting your feedback. And now we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including AK, David R., Carlos G., Robert N., and AJ. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of Catch 1782? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com, or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord, or watch The Secrets of Doctor Who on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia and leave a comment there. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing another Big Finish story, but this one featuring the Sacha Dhawan Master called Self-Help. Sacha Dhawan was the actor who played the Master in the 13th Doctor's time. So that should be interesting. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, listening might have been more productive than pickling her in laudanum.